Hi everybody, this is Oksana, and today we're going to make a bit of a time-consuming, more complicated pendant. So I would recommend this for someone that is intermediate. I definitely don't recommend this as your very first pendant because it's just a little more complex. It almost is like two pendants in one when you're making it, because first we are going to make this back frame and the tree, and we're going to attach the tree, and that's almost like a separate entity that we're going to make, and then we're going to do this frame around it to decorate it. So if you want to see how I made this, just keep watching. My stone is called a Blue Opal. It looks like this. It's not an actual opal, but that's just what these stones are called, and I think it looks really scenic for a tree. It does have this sort of scratch here, or I think it's just a natural part of the stone, like a layer going through, and I think the tree would kind of cover that up and it would make it look better. So let's see. It measures about 1.25 inches, or about 33 millimeters, and the first thing I'm gonna do is just get a little piece of 18 gauge round copper wire. It's about 4.5 inches. You don't have to use 18 gauge, you can use 20 as well, especially because this stone is quite small. So here is that wire. It's just round wire from RioGrande.com, and what I'm gonna do is use some round nose pliers. The ones I'm using are the Lindstrom Rx 7590, and I'm gonna make a small little swirl just like that. And now I'm just kind of bending the wire a little bit. What I want to do is make a frame that will go on the back of my stone, and obviously the frame is going to have two ends from the beginning and the end of the wire, and I'm going to make these little loops on the ends so that I can connect them. And I actually want that to be roughly in the middle on the edge, because if we do it at the top or at the bottom, that's where we're going to be attaching the roots and the majority of the branches. So it usually works a lot better logistically for those little connections to be on the side. So I'm just bending this so that it's like a little frame that sits in the back of my stone. This, and you don't want the frame to be too big. If you want to kind of make it smaller rather than bigger. So if you're not sure, go smaller. So like this, you want all the edges of the stone to be exposed and visible. So now we're just gonna trim it and make another swirl. If you are having trouble determining how short to trim it, you can go ahead and start making the swirl by kind of curving your wire, and then when you kind of get a good look at where the swirl is going to be, you can trim it, and we're just gonna swirl it. I'm going to use my pliers now. The pliers I'm using are the RX 7890. So I'm just going to use those to help me arrange this a little better. It doesn't matter that, you know, one little swirl is bigger, one is smaller. It's not really a big deal. This is just all going to be in the back of the stone for the tree roots and branches to attach to. So here's what mine looks like. If you want to hammer it for strength, I would recommend doing that, especially if you're using 20 gauge wire instead of 18, because that's going to be a little bit flimsier and thinner. So you just need an iron block and a chasing hammer, and you're going to use the flat side of the chasing hammer, and you're just going to hammer this. So here's the hammered frame, and now we're just going to take a small piece of 24 gauge half round copper wire. It looks like this, just a very small piece, maybe 3 inches. That should be adequate. All we're going to do is we're just going to connect these little loops together because right now they're not connected. So we're just going to wrap our half round wire through the loops and put it through again, just to make that connection there. You can just kind of press on that. And now before I cut the wire, I'm just gonna wrap it around just a single wire here, just like this. And then when I cut it, wherever you cut it, that's going to be the back or the side of the frame that's touching the stone, so that this little wire end, here it is here, I'm going to just press down on it. So if this is up against the stone, the wire end is hidden away. So now we're going to take this wire, I'm going to put it through this little loop, and I'm going to wrap it around just the single wire there, just like this. And now I'm going to trim it, and then just press down on that little wire end there so it's not sticking up, just like this. All right, this is how my frame is going to go. So for the tree portion, for the branches and the roots and everything, you have lots of different choices. I have quite a few tree videos so you can see how they look with a different number of branches, different thicknesses of wire. Because I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long, I'm going to use a thicker wire and I'm going to do less branches. So it's going to be a less fluffy tree, more of a quicker tree. But you don't have to do that. I'm just doing that just to, you know, save you time and not make this a super long video. But you can put as many branches as you want. 20 branches, I've done that before. That looks really, really good. That's kind of like a really fluffy tree, in which case I would use a thinner wire, like a 26. But I'm using a 24 gauge wire, round wire, and I'm gonna do just 10. So I'll measure this in a sec. But basically I'm gonna be folding it in half, so to equal 10 branches, I need 5 of these wires. So the 5 wires are 8 inches long, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold them in half like this, and then we're going to attach them to the frame. So I'm gonna take just one at a time, and the way that my frame is gonna be is like this. This bottom portion is gonna have the roots, the top is going to have the branches, and so the attachment of this is where the roots are. So I'm taking it, it's folded in half, I'm bringing it like this, right to that little bend there, and then I'm wrapping it around once, just like that. And then after I've wrapped it around, I'm going to use my pliers to just sort of bring these wires closer together like that. All right, so that's one attached. We have 4 more. This usually kind of slides around if you need to move it out of the way. So we're just gonna wrap the next one, wrap it around once, and then we're gonna use our pliers to bring those wires together. Make a nice tight wrap like that. All right, just 2 more of these left. And the last one, and then we can work on making our tree. All right, so let's bring those together in just like a little bunch here on the bottom. I'm gonna just straighten out these wires. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pre-bend these roots. So I'm gonna grab them, they're like in little bunches of 2. So like the one wire that we wrapped around would be 2. And I'm just taking my pliers and I'm bending one way, then I'm moving my pliers and I'm bending the other way, and it makes these little triangular bends like that. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm doing like a little bit because this is gonna go around the edge of the stone, and only then is it going to go on the front. So this needs to be a little longer. If you make this really short, by the time you bend it around the bottom edge of your stone and it reaches the front, you won't even see these bends. It'll just be the straight wire. That's why we have to bend for kind of a longer little stretch there. So you're just gonna do that to all the wires, and this will give the appearance of kind of bendy roots. You can always touch them up afterwards. All right, so once we have done that, we're gonna put them all kind of here at the bottom. Just gonna press a little bit on them. That's just gonna get them flatter. So figure out which side is the side that's supposed to be touching the stone. So for me, the wire ends are here. So this is the side that's supposed to be touching my stone. So it goes like this. So you just want to position your frame nicely, kind of centered here in the back. Hold it still, and then we're gonna bend these right around that bottom edge there. And see what I mean? Now we can see these little roots here in the front, whereas if you just bent a little bit, it would just be here on the edge. So you can take this stone out because it's not secure, and then here, where the roots are just kind of ending, we're gonna twist this together. You can use your pliers to help you if you need. And that makes the trunk of the tree. You can take your stone, place it back in there just to see how that's looking, and decide how tall you want the trunk to be and where you want your branches to be. So for me, I think that that is probably good height for my trunk, and I can go ahead. I'm just going to twist it maybe a little bit tighter so it's not so wide. This next part is really up to you, how you do your branches, how many wires per branch. So I'm gonna grab 3. I'll show you a few different things here. So one thing you can do is a little bunch of 3. And if you do that, we're just gonna twist with our pliers just carefully, because these wires can snap easier because they're so thin. 3 wires together, then I'm taking the bottom one and I'm giving a twist to the other 2, and this is one type of branch. And we're gonna do that here on this side as well. And then the other type is where you have 4 wires. Okay, so this is 3, just like on the other side. And now we have 4 wires. So you can also make, in this case, it's kind of like our trunk, but you could have made a branch made out of 4 wires, and then it splits into 2 sets of 2. That's another kind of cool look, but feel free to experiment because trees are all so different and they look different. Their branches are all bent differently, so it can be really fun designing kind of a unique tree. So this is my little tree, and at this point I'm gonna take my stone, I'm gonna pop it in here. Some people like to use some of that blue painter's tape and put it around here so it holds. It's up to you, or you can just hold it with your fingers. I'm gonna press on these roots a little bit just so they're nicer and more pressed up against my stone, because they look a little bit, there's like a little gap there and I don't want there to be a gap. All right. Here's my little tree. So if I flip it over, actually, let's go back to the front for 1 second. I'm gonna take these 2 branches. I'm gonna just kind of crisscross them and bring them to the back, like that. So then here on the back, I'm gonna take them and I'm going to attach them to my frame. And I'm gonna wrap around, probably like 4 times will be good, because you want it to be a nice, strong attachment. So like this, and then we're just gonna do the other one as well, and then we'll just trim the wire ends at the same time for both of those. So 1, 2, 3, and then this will be number 4. So here's how that looks. I'm gonna trim it now. Remove this excess. There's actually not a lot of excess there. And these little wire ends, I'm gonna take them, I'm gonna curve them down, pointing down, and I'm gonna press that underneath the frame, and I'm going to do that here as well. Point it down so it's kind of curving under there, and then press it to tuck it away so that the wire end is underneath the frame. So now we just do the next set of branches. I like to just take them, bend them from front to back, and attach. I'm gonna just attach both. And now I'm gonna go ahead and wrap around so that it ends up being 4 wraps. Yep, like that. And on the other side. And now I'm going to trim. Remove the wire ends there. And then we're going to tuck this away by curving it under and just tucking it underneath the frame like that. Okay, and with the other end. So this is really repetitive. And then you just take the next branch, bend it from front to back like this, these next two, and attach them. So I'm going to attach them, and then I'm going to attach these other ones, and then the last ones we'll do together because we'll do that a little bit differently. But these I'll just do off camera real quick because it's just very repetitive. All right, so I finished the next two, and now we just have the last one here. So here's how that looks from the front. Just these very last ones here left. We are going to do something different with them. We are going to wrap them around one time. You can do once or twice, but my wire is not that long, so I'm just going to do once so I have more wire remaining because we're going to use that wire for something later. Okay, so just like that. So now our tree is attached, and this is the point at which you can perfect your tree. So I'm just kind of separating and moving the roots to be how I want them to be. I'm going to move my trunk to kind of cover up this little area in the stone that I don't like. And I'm going to bend it this way. So it's kind of like a bendy, swooping tree. And now for the roots, or I'm sorry, the branches, what I like to do is I like to just bend them back and forth with my pliers, so kind of the same how I did on the bottom there, except this is just, you know, one single wire, and there I was bending 2 wires at a time. And what that does is gives them more of a appearance of branches, makes them a little bit more bendy. Like that. So it's up to you if you want to do this part or how much you want to bend it. It's a little bit hard to do it with these types of pliers that have the very pointy little ends. It's better, the ones with the flatter ends are a little bit easier to do this with. But I already have these with me, so I'll just make them work. Almost done. Now we just have these 3 left. And of course, I would disclose that the stone has like a little boo-boo on it, a little scratch. Maybe take a photo like this so you can kind of see it, because I tried to cover it up with the tree, but I wouldn't want people to think that it's like a perfect stone and then be disappointed. All right, so here's my little tree. And now we're gonna treat this kind of like a cabochon, right? Because it doesn't have a bail, ignore these 2 little wires. We're gonna treat it as if it's just a normal cabochon, and we're gonna put a wire frame around it and just wire wrap it like a normal stone. So to do that, I'm gonna use 20 gauge square wire, but you could, I just wanna say, you could do whatever design you want that you would use on an oval cabochon at this point. I have lots of tutorials for lots of different designs, and I'm just gonna do a very simple one here. So it's simple and quick, but you can do all different things, make, you know, a unique bail. You can make it with swirls or whatever you want. All right, so I have 3 pieces of square dead soft copper wire and 20 gauge. I am measuring them. They are 10 inches long. So we are gonna make our little attachment here. I'm just finding the middle of them, and I'm going to be using the half round wire that I used earlier when I was doing that little frame for the tree. So it's just 24 gauge, half round, dead soft copper. I'm taking a little, it's all tangly, little wire end of it. Just double checking that that's the middle so I can get it started. So I'm gonna get it started. It's connected to the spool there on the other side. Get it started, trim. Press down that little wire end. And now what you want to do, since it's connected to the spool, just going to flip it over, is just guide this half round wire to keep it from twisting on you so it stays flat side down, half rounded side up, and I'm turning with this hand as I guide with the other hand. And you just want to do this for a little bit. This doesn't have to be very long. It's just to make sure that these 3 wires stay connected together. And then we're going to trim right on the same side where we trimmed the other end of the wire, so that our little wire ends end up being here on the same side. And we're going to press them down, and then you can also kind of press this closer together if any of it got separated and there's little gaps. So this is our connection, and we want our stone to be sitting in it, and we want the bottom of our stone to be here where the wire ends are, so that the wire ends will be hidden. So because our stone is an oval, you could do this with other shapes, definitely, but ours is an oval, so we want that little bend on the bottom to be a curve for the oval to kind of sit in. So I'm just roughly doing it. This won't be the perfect fit, but just so I have something. And then I'm gonna take my stone, put it in that little curve, hold it there, and then you can bend the wires around. It's a little tricky. They want to slip off. Sometimes if you can just get them bent just a little bit, you can hold them here on the sides, because that's where they want to slip off. And then you can bend the top portion of them. You want this to come together at the top like this. So just like wrapping a normal cabochon, you can just reinforce that bend with your pliers. Make sure that they don't crisscross and they stay nice and flat and kind of stack together like this. And now we can connect all of those wires together by grabbing our half round wire again, grabbing a little end of it. The rest of it is still connected to the spool, and we're just gonna wrap around a few times to make sure that those wires stay together nicely. I'm gonna kind of push this down, push those wires all together. I'm gonna take the wire end, bring it from back to front, just gonna pull on it and trim it basically as short as it can go. If there's still a tiny end of it sticking out that you can see, you can just kind of press on that with your pliers. So now we're gonna make our bail. For the bail, we're gonna take the front 2 wires, and so it's just these ones. If you kind of follow them up, it's these 2. bend them forward, and this is going to be our bail. Sometimes it helps to bend the other wires back a little bit so you can get in here easier. And we're going to wrap around those 2 wires with the half round wire, and that is going to be our bail. You want the 2 wires, because they're square, they have a flat edge and then they have corners, so if one of them has bent a little bit and you have a corner facing you, you can just gently bend it with your pliers so that it's just the flat edges. They're kind of like stacked together nicely, and then go ahead and wrap. So I generally like my bail portion, like the length of it this way, to be about 3/4 of an inch. So that's what I'm gonna do, but you can always make yours smaller or bigger depending on your preference or the size that you need your bail to be. If you have like a nice thick necklace, maybe a beaded necklace that you want this to go on, then the bail would have to be a little larger to fit on something like that. So I'm just going to do this for a few minutes and then I'll come back when it's long enough. All right, so then I'm going to trim it, and my wire end is going to be, so if this is the front and we're looking at it, this is kind of the front of the bail. On the back is where I want the little wire end to be. And then I'm going to press down on just that whole bail, not just the wire end, but all of it. And that kind of flattens the wire because it's half round wire, and it gives it this kind of flatter look. So now we're going to take these wires, and there's 2, if you kind of follow these along. The first one we used for the bail, so there's 2 left, the middle and the back ones, and those are the 2 that you want to take and bend to this side, and then the other 2 to the other side. So it'll look like this. Looks like this isn't perfectly centered. It's a little bit too far to the right. So I'm just going to attempt to move it. All right, I think that fixed it. So for the bail, we're going to start curving it and shaping it like a bail. And then we're going to take the ends here, these wire ends of the bail, we're going to put them through the frame, and then we're going to press on here and bend these through the frame and kind of just upwards like this. Then I'm going to take the left wire and I'm going to bend it from front to back, and then here on the back I'm going to trim, and I'm going to tuck away this little wire end. But before I do that, while I have my wire cutters here, I'm going to take this wire and cut it as close as I can in there. I don't want an end of it sticking out. I want it kind of in the frame. Now I can take this little wire end, tuck it in there, press it in, hide it away, and we have our, there we go, slightly crooked bail. Fixing that up. All right, that looks good. So now we can take our stone and we want to put it here through the back, because you want these wires to remain on the back. If you try to put it through the front, they kind of get in the way. So we're going to put it through the back, just like this. And then we are going to bend the backmost wires. There's not a lot of space here to bend these back wires onto the back to trap the stone in, so you just have to work with it. There's like a little bit of space on the edge. That's why I said make sure your frame is, you know, not too big. Make sure it's a little bit smaller than the stone, that way you have those little edges. And we are going to bend onto the stone to help keep it from popping out the front. We are going to do an additional step. So don't worry. That's why I left these wires. They're going to provide a little bit extra security for us because this back portion doesn't really get trapped very well, as you can see. So we'll do that in a minute. First, we're going to trap it in from the front. So I just see a little gap here. I'm going to press on. All right, that looks good. So with my pliers, I'm just going to slide down. See this frontmost wire? I'm just going to go down here to the bottom. I'm going to try to get right to that little wrap there. And then I'm going to put a bend like that. Press that down so it's up against the stone, and the same thing on this side. So just going to bend the wire just like that. Try to match to the other side there. All right, and here's how it looks from the front. So the stone is trapped, at least here on the bottom. And now we're going to use these wires to basically attach to the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these wires, I'm going to wrap them around. You can wrap around all three, but I'm just going to wrap them around just these two. But there's different ways that you can make this attachment. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to take this wire and I'm just going to wrap it around just the frame, like I was wrapping all my branches around the frame. So just going to wrap that a few times, and then I'll trim that off. Whoop, the stone wants to come out, but we won't let it. All right, so that's good. We have attached to the side there. And now we just have to tuck away that little wire end. Don't worry about the stone. By me pressing on it, it can pop out. All right, so that attachment is done. We are gonna just make this attachment now on the other side. So again, just wrapping around either all three or just the back two wires there. Just like that. And now wrapping it around the frame so that I can trim it. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a curve so that when I tuck it under that frame, it kind of curves and it's easy for me to grab that little end. Rather than if it was straight, it might be sticking straight up and it might be hard to get to. All right, so now we're just gonna trim and tuck away that little wire end. And now it's attached on both sides. And now your stone, it might wiggle the tiniest bit, but it's not gonna pop out, and we'll make it a little bit more secure here on the top as well. So now you can finish off these wires. You can do different designs, decorations, swirls, whatever you choose. So I'm gonna do my little side swoopy things that I do all the time. And I'm gonna just bend and swoop this frontmost, or not, it's technically not the frontmost, it's the second one in, wire. And then I'm gonna have the other wire follow it along. Like this, and then when they're here in the back, I'm gonna trim and tuck away those wire ends there. And just tuck and press them into the frame like that. This next wire I'm gonna twist for that sort of effect that it gives. So I'm just holding it with my pliers and I'm turning the piece, and because it's a square wire, it turns, and it's basically those little edges of the square sides that get twisted around and around, and it gives it this sort of pattern. So now I'm gonna swoop it across, following those other wires, bringing it to the back, trimming it, tucking it away in there, just like that. And now with this wire, I'm gonna bring it across, and you can just tuck it away for kind of a plain looking tree if you don't want to make it too complicated, but I'm gonna make a little swirl with it, which is totally optional, but I'm just gonna swirl it around like this, making kind of just a circular little loop or swirl like that. And then I'm going to trim just the tiniest bit. This is a good length wire. I just trimmed the teeniest bit off because I'm going to make a little swirl with this wire end here. Oh, wrong pliers. Now I'm going to use my round nose pliers again, coming back to those. And I forgot to mention my wire cutters when I was showing the tools, but I have the Lindstrom wire cutters. So I'm just making a swirl like this. I know it covers up the tree a tiny bit, so if you don't like that, feel free to kind of skip this portion, because there's a little bit of extra work required here. But it also helps the stone move. The stone kind of stopped moving around once we did all this, because it kind of secured the frame a little bit more. But this will also kind of hold the stone from the front a little bit once we attach the swirl. So to attach the swirl, I'm grabbing my half round wire, just about 3 inches should be adequate. So I'm just putting it underneath this frontmost wire, grabbing a little end of it there, and first I'm just going to attach it. It's okay that it's down here. It's harder to attach it up there because we have like branches and everything in our way. It's easier to just attach it and slide it up. So I like to do maybe about 4 of these little wraps, and now we're going to do a similar thing where we trim and tuck away that little wire end. Just tuck it away in there. Now I'm going to hold this little wrap that I've created, raise up this little wire, and we're going to slide it. It might get stuck where it hits the branches, and you might have to kind of move this little frontmost wire. Move it up a little bit so it can get over the branches, and then you can push it back down. So now to attach our little swirl, I'm just going to put this around the swirl like that. And now I'm going to wrap around only this wire again. So it's going through the swirl this time. And now the swirl is attached, and I'm just going to do about 4 single wraps around just this edge wire so that it's secure before I trim and tuck it away. So now the same thing, trim, tuck away this little wire end, curve it in there. If it's separated this way, you can kind of bring it together. You can push this edge wire up against the stone if it's moved away from it in this whole process. But now your stone should be feeling good and secure, and you have this little decorative swirl and a tree and a frame around your stone. There's a little bit of space here. This would be a fun space to fill with some beads. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Actually, I was a little bit worried about this video being long, but it's probably already very long. So let's grab some beads. So I'm going to use a larger bead, which is 3 millimeters. These are from Rio Grande. And a smaller bead, which is 2 millimeters. And I'm going to use a piece of that half round wire, a little longer this time, about 5 inches or so should be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this half round wire to the edge here. So I'm just going to grab it, have a nice long end of it here, and wrap it around a few times, about 4 times should be good. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're just gonna trim, and then we're gonna press that little wire end into the frame, and we're just gonna press down on this whole thing. We're gonna slide it up as well, like that. Now we're just going to slide our beads onto our wire. I'm going to do a bigger bead and then a smaller bead, but you can do the other way around. You can do small and then big. You might also need to do a different number of beads to fill this little space, because your stone might be bigger, this little area might be wider, so just have to play it by ear. You can also use seed beads or gemstone beads. It doesn't have to be these exact copper beads. So I'm just putting the wire end right through this little loop because I'm going to attach it to that little swirly loop. I'm just pulling on that. And now I'm going to wrap around a few times because I don't want this to come unattached or unravel. So I'm going to just wrap a few times before I trim this wire. Let's see, maybe one more time, about 5 times. One more. I didn't want this little wrap to reach to the bottom. Kind of like that. All right, so now we're gonna trim. Leave ourselves a little tiny wire end. There it is, sticking out there. We're gonna take it, curve it, press it in there, and we are done with our little swirly beaded tree pendant. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.